Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Illumineers Quest podcast, where we talk everything Lorcana. I'm Zach.
I'm Jacob.
Thanks for coming on this journey with us. Okay, I don't think we've ever officially called it a meta report. We've definitely done these types of videos before, but it's our first official Chapter 3 meta report.
I think it is. I'm excited to do it. We'll say it a million more times probably in this episode, but this is the healthiest meta that Lorcana has seen yet so far, I think.
I think that it gives everybody an option to play a very fun deck that fits their style but still be competitive.
And we will get all into that later in the episode.
Yeah, for sure. So, as always, everyone, thank you for listening. We really, really, truly appreciate all the support and all the listeners. And we have one of the best Lorcana community that I could have ever asked for. If you're listening to on any of the major podcast networks like Apple or Spotify or iHeartRadio, we also have a YouTube channel where we do unboxings and tier lists and any other video content like that. So follow us there as well. We also have an X/Twitter account at LorcanaPod if you want to follow any of the hot takes that come up there. You can also email the show at lorcanapod@gmail.com to ask the show any questions. And then if you want to support the show, the best way to do that is through our TCG Player affiliate link, which is in the description below of wherever you're listening/watching this. And it really does help us grow the show and continue to do the show, and at some time in the near future, hopefully upgrade the equipment of the show so it sounds even better. So as always, again, thank you so much for the support and everybody for listening. And we do have another listener comment to talk through this time too. And we talked a little bit about this, kind of the new deck style/type that has kind of popped up this time, which would be the tempo deck. And I think I did a decent job of explaining it, but Greg emailed the show and talked about some of the history of tempo stuff in Magic and other TCGs, and has given me a much better understanding of tempo. And so I think it's worth talking about to all the listeners so that they can help understand that too when they're talking about it and trying to get set advantage. So tempo, as he says it in the most eloquent way, and to be time efficient here, I'm going to just read it. The first sentence he says on this, because I think it's the perfect way to explain it, is tempo comes from the concept of gaining a temporary advantage, usually referring to board presence. So it's not like a long-term advantage that you're going to give yourself, because there's there's drawbacks, I guess, to that tempo. And so again, the best tempo definition that we have in Lorcana right now is around the Emerald cards. Specifically the legendary Ursula, Deceiver of All, and Cloud Kicker. You have a big tempo advantage with Ursula because you can double sing Mother Knows Best, which bounces 2 cards back to your opponent's hand. You have tempo given with Cloud Kicker because, again, you can bounce a card early in the game back to your opponent's hand. So the board presence that you're giving yourself is going to give you a temporary advantage, because you could potentially take 2 or even 3 cards in one turn. If you play Ursula turn 3 and turn 4 sing Mother Knows Best and Cloud Kick something, that could be a 3-card board presence advantage that you're temporarily giving yourself. So I think the kicker here is that it's Cloud Kicker. That was no pun intended on that one, but it was kind of funny, I thought, at least. Is that it's very temporary and you have to take advantage of it. If you don't take advantage of it fast, it might come back to bite you in the butt, because if you kick 3 cards back to your opponent's hand, that's 3 cards that your opponent now has in their hands to give you a card advantage with. And so you have to take advantage of those situations when they come up. If you don't take advantage of those situations and get 5 or 6 lore from it, then you're probably going to end up in the long run not getting an advantage out of it.
Absolutely.
Makes
tempo.
sense, right? That makes sense, right?
Sure.
That's a ton of help.
And one more time, who said that?
That would be from Greg.
Thank you, Greg. That was
very
well done.
He said a ton more.
I'm looking at it here. He's put in a lot of things here. So thank you.
I read through the whole email, and again, I don't want to take the time of everybody to talk through all of this because there's a ton, but I think the amount of advantage that you can quickly give yourself and then have that temporary advantage to really get a bunch of lore out of it is really a good definition and a good way to think about the tempo. So I think the important thing to take away here is that the tempo is temporary, and you have to take advantage of that tempo, because if you don't, then it might come back to bite you in the butt.
Oh, for sure. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, appreciate it. Okay. Card of the week. Let's hear it.
All right. I have Piglet Pooh Pirate Captain in Amber.
One of the card pack artworks.
And one of the cards that I felt was wrongfully not in the tier list that our last episode.
It definitely deserved an honorable mention. It probably could have been on there as well, but I digress. It is a good card, and is definitely one worth looking at for your Amber aggro decks.
So it's a 2-cost, inkable, 2 strength, 2 willpower, 1 lore, and his ability is, and I'm the captain. While you have 2 or more other characters in play, this character gets +2 lore.
So not 2 lore, 3 lore, which a 2-cost, 3 lore character is nuts.
I'm in inkable. That's the big thing. Yeah.
And 2 strength, 2 willpower, because you have other characters like Pinocchio and the new Simba that have 3 lore at 2 costs, but they're uninkable and no strength and no willpower essentially. And so it's a lot easier to remove and trade favorably into. Where Piglet's not quite as easy. But yeah, Piglet, I agree. I like it.
I mean, it's very important to it. It's deck type, which is aggro, I think. So worth a honorable mention, I think.
Yeah, it's a little situational because you have to have other characters on the board. But again, if you're playing aggro and you're trying to go wide, like you're probably going to have those characters on your board anyways. And so yeah. I don't think that's really much of a downside. If we're talking bare necessities as well, in those aggro formats, your susceptibleness to grab your swords is a lot less as well. And so I think that it has even more value when some of those combos come up. But yeah, I love Piglet too. I think I've played that one in my Perdita deck that I've taken to League a couple weeks this set so far, and it's been really fun.
For sure. Absolutely.
So yeah, great one. Okay, that was quick and easy, I think. But yeah, we can move on here to news, what's on our mind, league recap, any what's going on in our Lorcana circle here. So it's funny because we were just talking, and I finally got my Montanui mat, and I guess it's technically. I know. I always call it the Montanui mat. I guess it's not technically the Montanui mat. It's how far I'll go. But we're, as of recording, we're like potentially right around the corner from like the initial like info release on set 4, and they always do the accessories as well. Like give you the preview of the box and the card art and some of the accessories and deck boxes and sleeves and all that stuff. And we both agreed that we are most excited to see what the new playmats are.
And so I'll add on to this. Our good friend of the podcast, Y Breezy, brought up like these themes that they've been doing with the chapters.
Yep.
And so I think this one is mainly based on like exploration, sea, pirates, that kind of thing. And he brought up space, which I think is a really interesting one, and maybe they even hinted at with Stitch.
Potentially.
I think that could be a possibility.
That would be fun. I mean, I know that you're still in that like exploration. You're just getting into the space realm. I would love some space. I'd love a Space Mickey. Space Mickey would be fun.
I mean, there are some really iconic Mickey astronaut like styles out there. Like I don't know if you've seen the Epcot astronaut Mickey.
Yep.
I mean, there are some iconic ways they could go with that.
Yeah, so what is on our mind at this very moment as we were talking before recording the episode is our excitement for the Chapter 4 announcements, mainly because we want to understand the theme and we want to see the playmats, because we are both... I'm becoming somewhat of a playmat degenerate. I've got 4 now, and I am not upset about it. And I will continue to get them because they're just so gorgeous.
So I never got a Chapter 1, which I'm really upset about. But I digress. I've gotten 2. One has gotten to my dad. I had the Beast one from Chapter 2. That is now my dad's. I have How Far I'll Go. And my brother uses the Stitch one. So we've all got 3 different mats in the household. It's a lot of fun. Literally, like, if you enjoy your playmat, you'll play better. I believe that.
I mean, it brings so much warmth to your environment.
100% does.
No, I like that. It's the vibes, it's the mindset. Yes. Like that helps fill it all out. So yes, I agree.
Deck box is also involved in that, I think.
For sure. Okay, yeah, I mean that's a pretty simple one, but I think that's fun considering where we potentially are, and by the time this comes out, there is a strong possibility that they've already been released, and I'm sure there's one that I'm dying for, and one that I will also want, regardless of it. But yeah, it's really fun. I think it just has very good vibes and good fun that adds to the Disney environment. So.
Could not agree.
That's where we are, but okay, I think that wraps that up. So getting into the main topic, which, like we said, is the meta report. And I think, given the current situation, there's shockingly like 5 really strong decks out in the world right now. And even more so, I think, different than some of the past is the variance within them.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ruby Amethyst has always been a little tinkery. Like, there's always been, like, add this card, take away this card, add an Ursula, take away a spellbook, add another Minnie Mouse, add a crab here and there, whatever the case might be. There's always been a little bit of tweaks. But aside from that, like, the lists are usually pretty rock solid. I would say this time the amount of, like, little tweaks and all the lists that I've seen have been very, very robust, which again, I think depending on your play style and your preference, and even more importantly, the cards you have, makes it very, very interesting. And so I like that a lot. And so without further ado, we'll talk about this 5. And I think, all right, let's start with the honorable mentions. So they don't just get thrown in at the end. Honorable mentions. There's 2 that I want to talk about honorable mention wise. Neither of them made the list because they both involve Sapphire, and as of today, if you watch the tier list video, you know that Sapphire still has a little bit of finding its footing. But we have, like, I'm calling it Popsicle 2.0. That's kind of what I've just dubbed it. I know it's not really Popsicle 2.0, but Popsicle 2.0, and then Sapphire Steel, the new version of that. And so Popsicle 2.0 is, I think, going to get some new life, and the reason that it kind of got outshined last set was because of the passive lore from the flutes and from the spellbooks. But with locations, everybody's got passive lore. And so you've got McDuck Manor as well, which we've talked about, which is really strong. You've got tons of removal through Hades and Let It Go and Be Prepared and all of the other Ruby tools that are very well known. And so there's just tons of options to, like, keep that board presence and then keep the McDuck Manors on there. But the early game with, like, Ruby, Sapphire, and Popsicles is just, like, really, really lacking, and so it's hard to get, like, early board presence, and you might just get blown out before you can even get to your bigger stuff. And so honorable mention there. Secondarily, the Sapphire Steel. Again, you have some cool ramp tools. You've got a lot of the steel removal, but there's just so many more impactful combos with steel these days that Sapphire is taking a little bit of a backseat. As annoying as Cogsworth is, there's just better disruptive tools with Bare Necessities and the Ursulas and all the other stuff that's come along. So those are the 2 honorable mentions. Both Sapphire. They're if you're a Sapphire fan like I am, Sapphire was my first love, but it is what it is, I guess, is the only thing I can say at this point.
I mean, look, Emerald made an astounding comeback.
That's true.
Sapphire can as well.
That's true. That's very true. So if you're a Sapphire fan like I am, fingers crossed
There's
for
hope.
There's
a
100%
strong,
hope. For a strong comeback in set 4. But okay, with that said, I think we have to just start with Ruby Amethyst, right? I mean, I think that's the most.
We're not in no particular order, right?
No, I don't think there's, like, a true winner yet. I think
that's correct.
There's probably been 4 big events that I've seen, that I've followed, and I'm taking this info from to share with everyone. And I think there's been a different winner at each of them. I know that there's been, and we'll just quick like preview, I guess. There's Ruby Amethyst. There's the updated Steel song that everyone's familiar with, the Amber Steel. There's the newcomer, Emerald Steel. Saw a little bit of life last time with the discard of the Bucky, but with the new Ursulas, that's definitely in there. There's Amethyst Emerald with all the tempo stuff that we kind of talked about with the Doug comments that he sent in already.
Greg.
What?
Did
I say Doug? Oh, that was last time. Greg. Sorry, Greg. Gosh, forgive me, Greg. I'm sorry. That Greg sent in. Doug was our last one. Our comment a couple episodes ago. And so, yeah, so then you've got Emerald Amethyst, and then lastly, I'm blanking. I've said 4. What's the last one I'm missing?
Jafar.
Oh, Jafar. Yes, Jafar. So you've got, and again, like we did with the tier list, you just called it the Jafar deck. It's a whole new thing. So we're going to walk through those and kind of just give quick overviews on the decks and kind of the play styles and what you're trying to accomplish with them. And so with that said, might as well start with Ruby Amethyst, because I think we both have a lot of experience with this one thus far. But yeah, Ruby Amethyst, it's very much in the same realm. You've got all the removal package from Ruby, whether it be your removal of choice of Lady Tremaine, Madame Medusa, Be Prepared, Maui. I mean, throw in Prince Eric. I think he's towards the bottom tier, not a ton. Dragonfire is a little bit of resurgence that I've personally enjoyed. So yeah, I mean, there's just so many of those continued tools. You've got the bounce package that is still as popular as ever. With the newcomers of Jim Hawkins and the locations, and the really, really strong resurgence of Crab, Merlin Crab, and then Maui's Fishhook to help deal with some annoyance. So the big changes this time are like the evasive package that you've seen. So like your Goofies, your Minnie Mouse, your Fidgets, your Peter Pan Shadow, like all of the evasive cards have kind of gone by the wayside thus far because of Maui's Fishhook.
Yeah.
So Maui's Fishhook, again, is the card that you can either give a character +3 strength or evasive until the start of their next turn.
Or both to a Maui.
Does it give both to a Maui?
It gives both to a Maui for free, right?
I don't think you can do both. It just, when Maui's on board, it lets you do one of those for free. So yeah, you can only choose one, but if Maui's on board, you have to exert for 2 ink. Normally, you do that for free. And so your Minnie Mouses that are normally relatively safe from crabs and goats and foxes now become susceptible to it because of the Fishhook, and so you've seen a little bit of shift in the meta there. But the overall kind of style of play is still very much the same. It's try to get some card advantage early on, get your bounce characters involved. And then later game, start to take over the game with your Be Prepared, your direct removals, and now the Jim Hawkins. So the Jim Hawkins package, as we talked about in the tier list, is going to play a location for free for you. And so his ability to get out a bunch of value from those is pretty incredible.
No, I mean, look, as a hard, true Ruby Amethyst, I am very happy with the upgrades.
Is this your favorite Ruby Amethyst version?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I will die on this hill. Aladdin Heroic Outlaw is still my favorite card. I wish that were still like a meta-defining card. It went from like Aladdin Heroic Outlaw to like a lot of the bounce stuff and Lady Tremaine in set 2, and now it's gone to like Madame Medusa and removal with that, and now more of a John or Jim Hawkins. And so
I mean, Elsa and Aladdin have completely fell off.
Elsa's pretty much completely out too, even of like your Amethyst Steel. So, but I digress. We'll get to that one later. So I like the gem stuff. I personally have had a struggle recently when playing through these of the right time to play Jim. I think I crutch Jim a little too much and try to get him out whenever I can with a location. But Maui's Fishhook and Crab make it really, really hard, because if either one of those are on board, then chances are next turn the location's getting taken out. And so you have to be really strategic as to when the time is to make that jump to put him on board. Yeah. So I struggle a little bit with that. But yeah, I mean, I think overall, obviously, the Jim Hawkins package is like one of the most annoying things to deal with. It's just everybody knows that now and everybody's ready for it, and so it's harder to get that value out of it than you did, a week and a half ago. I
think the most fun thing with this version of Ruby Amethyst is how many plug and play cards there are. It's like, you play it to your style, like if you like, for an instance, if you like playing like one cost Minnie and one cost Olaf, that's fine. If you like playing one of those, and then
Turtlebox Followers,
Rafiki, like there's
Teeth Inhibitions.
I mean,
Cusco.
Exactly, Cusco.
There's a ton of options early game to really do all those. And I think, and again, I kind of said this, but if you can take advantage of those cards like mid game with Crab and Maui's Fishhook, you can get a ton of value from a 1-cost card or a 2-cost card.
I mean, there's some. I love the overall pieces that are plug and play with this.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, and again, there are so many versions. That you can. How many Madame Medusas you want to run, how many Lady Tremaines you want to run, if you want to run Prince Eric or not, how many fish hooks versus crabs, and like all of the different permutations of that. You can really fit it to the way that you want to play. So there's not a ton of stuff to say because again, I think the gem piece / fish hook piece is the biggest change in it and everything else is very similar and everybody should be familiar with that. But if you're looking at running Ruby Amethyst, very strongly consider Maui's Fishhook, very strongly consider Merlin Crab, very strongly consider a couple Gem Hawkins.
Some Medusas probably.
Yeah, Medusas too for sure. And then just be very, very selective as to when you play your gems because Gem himself is okay. 4/4 stat line is fine, but if the location's just getting instantly removed and it's just him on board, there's much more impactful things you can do turn 5, turn 6, turn 7. And so that's the biggest struggle that I've had. And from there, you just gotta be in a good place to have some board control. So that's Ruby Amethyst.
That is Ruby Amethyst. I love it.
Which one? What do we want to talk about? What do we want to talk about now? Which next meta deck are we thinking?
I think can we go to my favorite to my least favorite of this list?
Why not? I don't see why not.
All right, let's do Jafar then.
Okay, let's do Jafar. So Jafar is obviously the striking illusionist that has the. I'm gonna cut that out and start over. Okay, Jafar is obviously the legendary striking. I gotta pause that again because I gotta get past the.
You can just mute it.
I know. Mute tab. Okay, Jafar the Striking Illusionist is obviously the really strong legendary card from set 3 that whenever exerted and you draw a card, you gain a lore from that drawn card. And so with A Whole New World, Friends on the Other Side, Rabbit, Yzma even.
Sure.
There are just so many card draw options that you can really, really turn the tide. You can get anywhere from 7 to like 16, 17 lore in one turn. The big advantage that this has too is that there are tons of Floodborns that are really, really strong in Steel. And so starting off with like a Blue Fairy is really, really impactful because she's evasive and can get a lot of card advantage from her as well to try to dig for those Jafars and try to dig for those Whole New Worlds. And so the whole idea behind the most popular Jafar deck right now is you either have like a couple opening lines depending on what you draw, but you've got like Captain Hook and Smee to put early pressure on the board and try to get out quick, or you also have the Blue Fairy line, which can help you kind of slow burn, get a bunch of card advantage, get to where you need to be to dig for the Jafars, to dig for your other removal characters, and to get into a place where you can then sing Whole New World with Jafar and get your 7 lore and have a really big swing in the game.
No, I mean, I have a member of my immediate family that this is his favorite deck, my brother Tyler, and it has killed me on several occasions.
I mean, seeing A Whole New World, especially like if you have 2 characters that can sing. Other really important cards in this package are, again, a lot of the shift characters in Steel. You've got the Jafar Juggernaut. You've got Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. You've got Robin Hood Champion of Sherwood. Beast Tragic Hero. All alone by themselves, all of those are really impactful cards. With Blue Fairy, they all draw you a card as well. And then since all of those, aside from Jafar, Beast Tragic Hero, Robin Hood, Champion of Sherwood, Tinkerbell, Giant Fairy, if any of those are on board with Jafar and you wheel into another wheel, then you can sing twice in one turn. And so just the threat that Jafar has, again, we talked about this in the tier list, is higher than I think any other card in the game right now.
That's fair. That's completely fair. I mean, you want to know like my main realistic con with this deck is it's freaking expensive. It's a really expensive deck.
It's yeah. I mean, this is probably a $500-$600 deck. I mean, just you've got $160 for Beast, $120 for Robin Hood, $60 for Tinkerbell. Throw in Jafar, probably another $60, and then the rest, a little bit of bounce package stuff. You're probably looking at another $60. So yeah, I mean, you're probably looking at $500-$600.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I do actually like the deck. I think there's lots of fun playable factors, and I honestly just love the combo of Amethyst Steel.
I mean, the direct removal of Steel. I mean, and I guess we didn't really overarching talk about this, but the meta right now is kind of Ruby Amethyst or your preferred version of Steel, whatever that is.
Yes, I mean, no, for sure. I completely agree with that.
So, again, I think that the main line on this deck and the way that you want to play it is, again, obviously try to get to Jafar as fast as you can. You've got 6 to 8 Jafar shift targets.
Which is a big deal, I think. There's so many misdirects.
Yeah, to shift Jafar onto to then to be able to sing that turn, which is, I think, the ideal scenario. If Jafar sits on the board without singing, then he obviously has the opportunity to be removed by something before he can sing. I think the really big advantage of him is, one, he's evasive, and so that helps, but 2, he has 4 strength, and with so many Madame Medusas, as we just talked about with the Ruby Amethyst, it's a little bit harder to do that direct removal with him. So, be prepared, and Dragonfire are the best direct removals, but those aren't, quite as, best options, I think, in that Ruby Amethyst package. But yeah, you've got some Smees, you've got Yzma to draw off of, you got a couple Rabbits to draw off of, you've got Rise of the Titans for location removal, you've got Grab Your Swords and Smash for obviously direct damage, and Tinkerbell to do some damage as well. So I think there's just, tons of options that you have with Steel that are going to do all that, and then to help you get to that Jafar place to really take it home.
No, for sure. It's got so many pieces. There's a lot of different cards. If you really think about it, Ruby Amethyst, a lot of the control works around the same kind of thing, banishing, but which is obviously what Steel does. But there's a lot of different ways to do it and to control the game with Steel Amethyst.
Yeah. I mean that's what Steel does. It just gives you so many options. But speaking of Steel, I think that's the perfect transition into Emerald Steel, which is the other really strong version. We saw Emerald Steel before in set 2, which was very discard focused with your Buckies. I think there's still a lot of that going around. Bucky, I think, is one of the most slept on cards because he has Ward, and so if you're not playing Steel, then it's hard to take off before turn 7, because Be Prepared is really the only other way to deal with it. And so Bucky can just force so much pressure on your opponent to continue to discard cards, especially when paired with Steel, as we just said, has so many awesome shift target characters or Floodborn characters to fuel that discard engine. And then add in the Morph, the 2 Ursulas, strike a good match for a little bit of double singing with Ursula for more card draw. And then all the songs that she can double sing as well, like Strength of a Raging Fire, Let the Storm Rage On. And you've got a very, very potent deck list that is very annoying to play against.
I mean, it's... I think that I love that it's really unique, honestly. Even that it plays the same kind of Steel cards that you'll see in the other Steel decks. I think I mean, honestly, I just love seeing the reemergence of Emerald. I think is the most exciting part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of those cards from our tier list, Kick Cloud Kicker, the Ursula's Morph, this particular version is a little less aggro, and so it doesn't have Curse Merfolk in it. But all of those Emerald cards now just have so much impact that they're all involved. I mean, and again, with Morph, you can shift on any of those other characters. Jafar, Beast, Tinkerbell, Robin Hood. They're all just going to get on the board fast with Morph. So yeah, I think that, again, if we talk about how to play this deck and not just that it is a meta deck, the idea obviously is to get a Bucky down quick and then just run into a lot of your Floodborn characters that I just mentioned that are going to really impact your opponent's ability to have a healthy hand and be able to have a lot of options and really just disrupt their their tempo and their play that they're trying to accomplish.
I think one thing that if I'm taking away from anything from all of these decks is really solid turn 2s.
Yeah, I mean, really good early turns for sure.
I mean, there's so many good turn 2 cards. I mean, there's 3 really good in this deck alone. You've got Bucky, Morph, and Ursula.
Yeah. I mean, early game board presence. Whether it be with Ruby Amethyst and your snakes and your Cuscos, with your Jafar decks on the Jafar or the Blue Fairy. Like there are tons of good ways to get some board disruption early in the game. But yeah, I think that this one's really fun if you have an Ursula playset to play with. And again, this one's pretty expensive as well because of your Beast Tragic Hero and your Robin Hood and your Tinkerbells. But it's I think a very fun deck, and definitely one that you have to like really be ready to go against, because if you're not prepared for Bucky to start ripping cards out of your hand, then you're gonna be top decking really quick, and you're gonna be in a sticky situation. So so then we have Bucky / Emerald Steel discard. I think that kind of covers out. Any final comments on that one?
I mean, again, I'll just say that I love that it's basically adding new decks. I love it. New archetypes.
Yeah, okay. So I think it wouldn't be right for us to leave Steel Song to the end, or are we at the end already? No, we have one more after this. Yeah, we have one more. So I think it would be terrible to leave the Steel Song at the end because it's been a mainstay for so long. So, want to talk Steel Song?
Man, this is one of those decks that is so I think I find it deceiving. It's like, it's like I don't necessarily think this is going to work, and then you play against it or play with it, and it's like, wow, why does this work so well?
I think I agree, because I agree with you. I think on the surface it looks strong, but it's way stronger than it looks, and I think the reason is it's really hard to play. I played a lot of Steel Song in set 2, and I would get stuck in the realm of like continuing to just sing like nonstop, like sing removal songs and just continue to like keep their cards off the board, but would never like turn that dial to like questing and like getting yourself to the finish line. And so I was just a really bad judge like when that turn needs to be made. If you're a good Steel Song player, then it's very annoying to deal with just because there are so many removal tools, and you throw in Bare Necessities in set 3 and you have even more disruption to your opponent.
Man, I mean, my brother played this for set 2 and 1. He was actually a pretty decent Steel Song player.
Yeah, he was pretty good for sure.
And so I have a little first-hand experience with this. Not the Chapter 3 version as much, but
yeah, I think. Sorry,
it's cool. I mean, to a certain extent, it is cool to see that. Like, if you really think about it, decks from Chapter 1 still living on, in the main versions of those being Ruby Amethyst, Steel Song.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting to see how they evolved. Like, and it's just crazy to see like how it's changed. Like, Rapunzel really isn't even like one of the main focuses of deck. She's in it.
No, I think this one is very much like a combination of set 1 and 2. Like we've gone back to the set 1 style with like Rockstar Stitch. And Rapunzel's still in it, obviously. There were a lot of lists where she was kind of taken out in set 2. So we've gotten those back, but we've also got some new tools like Bare Necessities and Along Came Zeus and Robin Hood, which I think are all really, really impactful because there wasn't a turn 3 shift target before, but now with Robin Hood, you can turn 3 sing a whole new world. I know that there was some Queen stuff going on last set, but she kind of fell out of a lot of the lists, and so I don't consider the Queen a ton. But yeah, there's so many. This is very much like play your early characters, and all of them being shift targets. So you've got Cinderella shift target, Stitch shift target, Robin Hood shift target, Cinderella again shift target, and then the exception being Ariel, which is obviously the best singer in the game because she can dig for songs and sing at 5, and then throw in your Bare Necessities to disrupt your opponent. So the biggest weakness for Steel Song, I think, pre-set 3 would be, your Be Prepareds, your, grab your swords against you. And now you can rip those songs from your opponent's hand because you've got bare necessities, and so you can play a little bit more loose when it comes to all of your 2 costs and your stitch, playing under 2 cost characters to get all of those on the board because you don't have to necessarily worry about grab your swords as much.
I mean, to your point, bare necessities being in Amber is the biggest win for Steel Song, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
For Chapter 3. I mean, it's such a big game changer. But, I mean, I still think, this is one of those decks, if you see someone bring this to a tournament, you're like, oh no, here's a master Steel Song player.
Yeah. Again, if you're a good Steel Song player, it's very, very tough to go against because they can do so much disruption. You can sing a whole new world so early on, again, with the Robin Hood shift target that you might have a plan, but then they're just going to kind of rip that plan out of your hand, and it's hard to really continue to build a momentum because at any point in time they can sing 2 or 3 songs, deplete their whole hand, and then replenish it to keep your board clear and their hand full. So it continues to be a strong one. If you're a masterful Steel Song player, I commend you. I, again, am not the greatest at Steel Song, but it's very, very, very strong. So, with that said, I think it's time we move on to the final deck and talk Emerald Amethyst.
Alrighty.
The tempo winner thus far. So I think this one had a little bit of a popsicle vibe early on where it kind of blew the world or took the world by storm really quickly, and there have been some counters already kind of put in play. But this one is very much an aggro deck. At heart, it really wants to finish the game quickly because the board clear methods, as we talked about earlier on the tempo talk, is to just move those cards from the board back to your hand, and so it could you could give your opponent a card advantage really quickly. But turn 1 Merfolk, turn 2 Flynn Rider are very hand disruptive cards if you can't deal with, and again, so early in the game there are very few tools that can do that without challenging. Flynn Rider by himself, in set 1, was annoying to deal with. But if it was just 1 card that you had to discard, okay, I can overcome 1. But if you're playing Merfolk turn 1 and Flynn turn 2, that's 2 cards plus trying to ink and play cards. That depletes your hand really quick. Then we've obviously got the Ursula packages, which we've discussed into the the oblivion thus far. But removing songs and double singing songs gives you a lot of tempo and again more hand disruption from your opponent. And kick Cloud Kicker for more tempo building. So,
maybe you can help explain it to me. But I have one problem with this deck.
Okay.
And as you just mentioned with the Merfolk and Flynn Rider, you early discard.
Yep.
But then there's many other cards in this deck that's putting cards back into your opponent's hand.
That's the tempo. So that's like we talked about earlier.
Okay,
that's
that
the
makes
tempo.
Perfect sense.
Is since this is a relatively aggressive deck, you're getting those temporary advantages. So that the temporary advantage early on with the Merfolk and the Flynn Riders is that it is taking those cards out of your hand. The mid game, if you will, turn 3 through 5 tempo that you're gaining is by kicking those cards back to your opponent's hand. And so again, if you're not in a position to really capitalize on that by turn 5 or 6, then you're probably going to be in a bad spot.
No, you're right. That speaks exactly to what Greg was saying. That makes perfect sense.
And then, you can really... So, again, this, with the Amethyst, this obviously has the bounce package. You've got the goat, the rabbit, the crab, the fox, and the snake. Because, again, crab's seen a pretty decent resurgence these days. So, late game, to cross the finish line, you've got your goats to get those passive lore gains from. You've also got Genie on the job, which does the bigger bouncing of any character that Cloud Kicker does early in the game to give you one more turn of advantage if you need it. Mother Knows Best to double sing with Ursula to double kick cards back to your opponent's hand. Queen's Castle to get some more passive lore, and if you're continuously kicking cards back to your opponent's hand, that can just sit there and generate passive lore. And so again, this one's very different than the rest. The other ones are pretty mid-range to control. I would consider Ruby Amethyst obviously pretty strong control. I would say Jafar is very much a mid-range deck. I would say Steel Song is very much a mid-range deck. And Bucky is in it kind of in its own realm as well, very much mid-range card disruption. from your opponents. But this is very much on the more aggressive side. Because again, if you're not finishing this out by turn 6 or 7, then your opponent's probably getting the tools that they need into their hand to clear your board and to have the late game tools that they need to pull ahead.
No, for sure. I mean, it's overall just really fun. It's
a very, very fun deck.
I mean, tempo, so far as we've seen it in Lorcana, is very fun to play.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun's very much in the eye of the beholder, because if you're on the other side of the board and you get double sung Mother Knows Best against you and then Cloud Kick something else, that's not fun for you.
That's not fun at
all. But that being said, I agree. I think the bounce package is really fun. I think Hit Cloud Kicker is very fun and one of my favorite cards of the set. I've always loved Genie on the Job. The double singing with Ursula is very fun. And then obviously the Ursula Deceiver to rip songs out of your opponent's hand is really fun too. So I agree. I think this is one of the most fun cards I've had. Again, I think this had a little bit of a Ruby, Sapphire, Popsicle kind of like meteoric rise really early on that drove that Ursula price incredibly high. I still think Ursula is obviously fantastic, but this deck specifically is not like the end all be all that we might have thought it was, just like Popsicle in set 2. So I think that hopefully this like helps people understand the meta a little bit better and like what the impactful decks are right now. But hopefully, like, I also wanted to like dive into how to play and kind of the thought processes behind some of these as well. I know I'm not like Zach Bivens or Steadfast or Zephyr or any of these like super advanced pilots of these decks, but it at least gives you the thought process that they're trying to accomplish when playing them.
No, for sure. You've done a great job. Honestly, you did a great job.
Well, shout out to Lorcana Villain as well. We used a lot of his
big shout out.
A lot of his compilations of different tournament winnings and finishes and top 10s and top 8s and stuff like that to compile some of these decks. But yeah, it's really fun to see such a healthy meta and such a vast diversity of options out there currently. So yeah, I'm really happy with the state of the game. I love all the different options. I've started to learn how to play against Ursula a little bit better, so that's not quite as annoying as I was a few weeks ago when I was very much in this is the most annoying card of all time realm. But yeah, I think that it's going to be interesting. We're coming up on the time now of the store tournaments, and that's kind of around the quarter now for those Stitch Rockstar promos. And yeah, we've got a lot of options. So you really got to consider like your local meta when deciding what you're going to pilot.
100%. I mean, that's come more recently into mind for me.
Yeah,
is with cards to put in and stuff like that. It's been awesome. I've really enjoyed Chapter 3.
Agreed. Okay. Any final words?
Oh man, to me it's really healthy. I think it's been a really positive Chapter 3 beginning and start.
Yeah, for sure.
And I love where it's going.
The one thing I would say is I'm sad that the Pirates hasn't worked out as better than it has.
That's fair.
I jumped on the Pirate bandwagon really early on with Jolly Roger and all the Pirates. That got countered, I think, pretty quickly by some of these other decks.
I think, unfortunately, every set there's going to be that one that pops up for like a week and then dies out.
Yeah, and I was really big a fan of that one, and so I was hoping that would stick around and be a little bit more staying power. But like you said, not all of them can be really strong. So hopefully this helps some people decide what they want to play going into the set championships for their stores and getting into the Stitch like us. If you have any questions, again, please contact us and let us know. And as always, thanks for the support and thanks for listening. And we will catch everyone next time.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.